Okay, we are live, episode 3, Business of E-commerce, and we are back here, Dale and I. And today we're going to talk about customer loyalty. I think this is a very important topic for a lot of people who are selling online through, let's say, Shopify, Amazon Marketplace. You want to keep winning repeat customers. It's also important for me at Ordoro because I'm the subscription software business. And my goal is like I need the customers coming back and paying me subscription revenue every month in a way, right? But there are a lot of myths around it. So I think Dale and I are going to dig into that. So Dale, I guess the biggest myth here is that customers are loyal for a lifetime, right? So there is this like cartoon that I saw on Marketune. I said, I'm going to put it up here and let's just go through that and to kickstart this discussion.
Yeah, so it says, and I promise to be loyal, forsaking all other brands, unless you're out of stock, your competitor's on sale, or you're just not meeting my needs at the time.
Yeah, this is. I think this is classic, and there are a bunch of other cartoons on that site, and it's in my LinkedIn post. You should go check it out. So this is like, I mean, I can totally relate to this. So, for example, yesterday I was at the grocery store and I was looking for this the favorite brand. I think it's called Late July. It's a brand of crackers that my kids love. I went to the aisle where it usually is. I couldn't find it there, so I asked the people at the grocery store to help me out, and they said that they just don't have it. So what did I do? I did not like go try to buy it online. I just looked in the same aisle. I found another brand which kind of looked like this is probably going to taste similar. It has like clean organic brand, so I just bought that. And then same again yesterday, I was looking for milk. The milk that I normally buy was out of stock, so I found the next best thing and I left home. So this kind of illustrates the idea that people are loyal to a brand, but if it's not in stock, or there are various reasons for which people could just buy a competitor brand. So I know that you and I have talked about this idea of like polyamorous loyalty. So what's your opinion on that?
So, yeah, so the idea is that even if someone has a favorite, it's not the only brand that they have a preference for. They may have, varying levels of preference for, multiple brands. They may typically buy a particular brand if it's available. If it's not available, they're going to go to their second favorite or their third favorite. Or if the second favorite has a half off sale this week, all that loyalty may go out the window, and they'll buy the second favorite. So, but the key idea is that buyers spread their loyalty across multiple brands. They may have individual preferences for those brands, um, and that a lot of your marketing is to get in that consideration set. Because again, if they don't know you exist,
Mhm.
their brand preference for you is zero.
Right.
Um, if they don't remember you, their brand preference is going to be zero.
Hmm.
So you've got to let them know that you exist, and you've got to be able to have some process to continue to remind them that you're an option, so that when they do have a need and they're ready to buy, you're the one they think of. But
Hmm.
but you're simply are never ever going to be able to achieve any sort of perfect loyalty.
Right.
And uh, and I've worked on loyalty and retention and churn issues for 25 years now across multiple industries. It is nearly impossible to fundamentally alter uh, the churn rate or the level of loyalty that you see in a customer base.
Hmm.
Uh, Most of the so-called loyalty and retention programs just fundamentally don't work.
Hmm.
There are certain special use cases where they can be, a useful thing to do, but um, and a good example of this is if you look at Apple. So there's probably no brand in existence that has more fanatic, loyal customers than Apple. But if you look at U.S. households that have a computer in the household, um, of the ones who have an Apple, only 1.5% of the let me say it a different way. Of all the households in the US that have a computer in their house, um, only 1.5% have only an Apple computer. The other 98.5% um, will
Like a
have
mix.
either a Windows
Hmm.
or a Windows and an Apple. But so even the most loyal brand out there, what you really see in terms of when people actually make choices is if they have multiple choices, they'll likely choose across that range of choices at different points in time and will not be completely loyal to one brand.
Yeah.
And even with airlines, um, I tend to fly Delta. I've got tons of points with Delta, but if Delta doesn't have a good, you know, uh, you know, exit or a return time, I'll fly JetBlue, or I'll fly
Right.
Southwest, or I'll fly
Hmm.
United.
Yeah.
Or if I don't feel like going through, Atlanta this time, I'll fly United. And
Yeah.
so even though I'm in their loyalty program and I have these points, it takes relatively little to get me to buy a ticket from another airline. If even though I'll typically will look at Delta first, but if they just don't
Mhm.
have a good option for me, I'm it's not like I'm going to cancel the trip. I'm buying from someone.
Exactly, and I think so. It looks like it's one of these loyalty programs is one of those things that we have to do, right? So, and I work with a lot of these e-commerce merchants, a lot of them selling through Shopify or Amazon Marketplace or BigCommerce, and so the thing I tell them is that for customer retention and return customers, you have to get a lot of the basics right. You obviously need to have a good store, a good product, a good shopping checkout payment experience, and also like a good on-time shipping, which is the area that Ordoro focuses on. The whole shipping and the returns experience, all of that needs to be clean, right? And then on top of that, they also do all the standard things like email marketing to their existing customers, sending out coupons for the next purchase. I think these are all prerequisites. You need to do this, kind of like the obvious stuff, but none of those guarantee that you are going to get like very high retention, right? I think another way to think about this is that these are things you need to do, but you need to also balance your expectation that yes, you can get loyal customers, but the loyalty only goes so far. You need to also be physically available in the store, like the example that I was telling you. If it's not there, your customer is definitely going to go for something else. And I remember like you had this example that you said in one of the earlier conversations where there was this very famous brand that they pulled out of the big, like one of those large retailers. And then what was the story again? Like
Yeah.
they started losing their Amazon, they started
Well,
losing website traffic, right?
and so some of this goes to two issues. So one is um, people need to people need to be able to remember you when they're ready to buy.
Hmm.
So a
Yeah.
lot of brand loyalty is simply around, do they remember you? And
Hmm.
then the second thing is when they're ready to buy, that you need to be available.
Hmm.
And you need to be available where they're buying. And in this particular example, this was a company with an e-commerce site, very successful with it, but they also had a retail distribution strategy. And so they were in big box retailers, and they were also had the full product line on Amazon. And at some point, they chose to largely exit from the retail side. So they pulled out of the big box retailers, and then they reduced their inventory, or the range of SKUs they had on Amazon to like 2 to 4 of the lowest end products.
Hmm.
And what you saw then was about a 3-year decline in overall business, as well as a 3-year decline in the Google search traffic. And so part of what was happening there was that being physically present on the shelf in the store, even if you're selling through primarily through an e-commerce site, but being physically present on that shelf is a major brand awareness and brand remembrance strategy, because every time someone goes into the store, even if they're not buying your product, if they're seeing your product, they're being reminded that you exist.
Hmm.
Um, and then the other problem is that if you go to buy, yeah, and I do this a lot, and there's really good research data that says that everyone does this a lot. You go to where it's the most convenient, even if it's
Hmm.
not necessarily the cheapest, and that's often Amazon, because I'm already set up on Amazon with a credit card. I know that Amazon will get it to me in a couple of days. I know if I don't like it, there'll be just no hassles with the return. Um, uh, So oftentimes, even if there's an e-commerce site, I'll go to Amazon. Well, what happens on Amazon is if I'm, and with this particular company, what started to happen was people were going on Amazon searching for their specific product by their brand, but it didn't exist because they pulled it out of Amazon.
Hmm.
Well, what happens at that point is Amazon is perfectly delighted to show you 15 other options that look just like it.
Right.
And and what happens is that when that, when you're shown other options, even if you have a lot of loyalty to that one brand, just the immediacy and the convenience of something that looks just like it is a click away, you're going to do it. So a lot of loyalty isn't so much about having loyalty points or a loyalty program. A lot of loyalty is, what are you doing to make sure that people remember you when they're ready to buy, and what are you doing to show up in the places that they actually want to buy.
Hmm.
um, and uh, and granted, especially if you're an e-commerce merchant, you really want them to go through your store because your margins are going to be a lot higher. You're not having to split
Right.
those margins with Amazon or Walmart. Um, but one of the things that increasingly means is that you need to have a checkout service that is as simple as Amazon. You need to have a return process that's as simple as
Yeah.
Amazon. You need to have a shipping service that is as simple and immediate as Amazon.
Right.
And and if you're a small e-commerce merchant, it's going to be a challenge to meet Amazon's level on all the points, but that doesn't mean you can just ignore it. I mean, you really have to be able to, to do as best as you can to try to match the expectations, because what's happened with Amazon is that they've made it so easy
Hmm.
that
They raise the bar on like all
they've
of this,
raised the
right?
bar for
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
And so you have to at least acknowledge that that's that's the level of the baseline level of expectation that people have. And even if you can't match it, if you can get closer to it in certain areas, you're going to end up with a lot more customer loyalty.
Yeah, and I think th this also illustrates the whole idea of this, like why multi-channel is so important, right? Because physical availability is a big part of retention. Because if you're not physically available where they're used to shopping, like what happened in my example yesterday, the product was not just not on the shelf when I wanted it, so I just went for the next possible option. So I think for small e-commerce stores, this basically means that okay, Amazon becomes a very important channel for them. You have to be physically available there because a lot of people are shopping through there. Even if they find you on your website, they may end up buying from there. It's not like such a happy news for a lot of e-commerce retailers for a couple of reasons. One is the margins are different. Second is that Amazon does not really share the customer information, customer email with you. So you cannot like directly email market to them, whereas if they bought from your Shopify store, you can email market. So there are pros and cons of it, but it looks like it is a necessary evil, right? You have to do this. If you don't do this, you're basically losing out on like getting repeat customers, right? So it's not just enough to have a great shopping experience and great shipping and great returns. All of that is necessary part of it, but you got to go above and beyond that. So are there other things? So we talked about buying experience, we talked about multi-channel, and maybe even like discounts and coupons. Are there other things that, and we'll get to this idea of like why you need to also focus on new customers instead of just repeat customers, but or returning customers. But for your existing customers, let's say you had like 100 people buy from you yesterday, are there additional things that they should look at to keep them coming back to your and buying from you?
Um, again, I think the main thing is don't give them a reason to not buy.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Which, which is a bar that not all e-commerce merchants seem to be able to get above.
Right.
Um, One other thing that I would mention is that, back to this idea of multi-channel or retail distribution strategy,
Hmm.
is if you're present on Amazon, a small minority of Amazon searches are brand aware searches.
Hmm.
Most searches on Amazon are category generic searches. So
Hmm.
you're going on looking for, you know, knife sharpeners, um, as an example. Um, so when you're on Amazon, and you show up, you're going to show up in the feed once someone does a category level search, if you're selling in that category. One of the things to keep in mind is that part of that fee you're paying Amazon or Walmart, or again, I'm just using Amazon as an example. So you're having to give up a chunk of your profit. Now Amazon is handling fulfillment and returns, so that's part of that cost
If
is
you're
that.
using FBA, but we don't, I mean, there are also sometimes merchants also ship from their own warehouse. So it
Right,
could be a
yeah, that's
mix.
true
Yeah.
too.
Hmm.
But one of the things you're also paying for is your presence on a
Right.
a high volume platform like Amazon or Walmart is brand marketing.
Hmm.
And so every time you show up in a buyer's feed and they see you, you're getting another remembrance. You're either telling someone that you exist that didn't know, or you're reminding someone that has forgotten that you
Hmm.
exist. And so, there's real value. So, so the thing to think about when you're analyzing the, the profit split, with a partner like Amazon or Walmart, is that some of this is pure profit going into their pocket, but some of this is also money you would have to spend elsewhere
Yeah.
anyway to be able to continue to let people know you exist and to remind previous buyers that you exist.
So that
And
loss in margin, it's almost like your marketing expense, right? That should go
yeah,
into that button. Yeah.
so it's not a free lunch.
Hmm.
You're not going to be able to simply n- not let people know that you exist, or not remind people that you exist, and save that money, because you're going to then not get customers. Because again, this goes back to this idea of, if we cannot dramatically alter retention rates, and we've got 70 years worth of data that prove this.
Hmm.
If you cannot dramatically alter retention rates, you know, that means if you want to keep growing, you need to be able to keep finding new customers.
Yeah.
And
So
so
that,
things like that brand awareness marketing, somewhere, I mean, and it can be, a really good retail shelf display, in a physical brick and mortar retail. It can be good presentation, in the search feed, on Amazon or Walmart or Target, or, whatever online store.
mhm.
But, um, but somehow you're going to have to keep letting people know you exist.
Yeah, I think that reminds me, there are a lot of myths around customer loyalty, right? One of my favorite is that everyone talks about the study, which I think has turned out that it was not. It's just all hypothetical examples. I think it says something like it costs 5 times or maybe even 25 times more to uh, find or to acquire a new customer than to keep an existing one. So retention is important. But I remember reading about the study, and that this is actually it was just a hypothetical example based on very simple algebra. They just said, right? So it was not really fact based. So, and I know that you have written about this in the past. So that seems like, I mean, that's another reason why. So, I mean, like among all the myths around loyalty, like, what do you think? What do you think about
Well,
that?
there's probably three really big myths that are just complete made up BS.
Hmm.
One is, there's one that's been around for a long time, which is, um, a 5% increase in retention will double your profits.
Hmm.
I mean, this is literally something someone pulled out of thin air.
Okay.
Um, there, and this thing's been floating around for 35 years. Not only is there not a single study that supports this, there are multiple studies by good market researchers that have that have proven that there is not a single example of anything even remotely like this ever having occurred in the real world. This is
Hmm.
a completely fraudulent piece of nonsense.
Hmm.
The other one is, it's 5 to 25 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than to keep an old one. And
Hmm.
again, completely made up. There's no research that supports this. And in fact, there's a lot of research that debunks it. The details depend on the product category. If you look at B2C consumer goods, um, it is often significantly more expensive to keep customers returning than to get customers to come the first time.
Hmm.
And you think about, what did it cost Coca-Cola to get you to buy the very first Coke? But then what is it's costing them over the decades to get you to keep buying Coke,
Hmm.
because otherwise they wouldn't need to be running TV commercials all the time.
Right. Hmm.
So for a lot, especially low consideration kind of consumer packaged goods, the cost of getting someone to buy the first time is a tiny fraction of what it costs to get them to continue to come back. Because again, what you got to think about is memories aren't infinite.
Hmm.
Um, the you first have to let them know you exist, but at some point they're going to forget
Right.
until and so they have to have some kind of a trigger to refresh those memories.
Yeah.
Now, again, if you look at Coke, one of Coke's big advantages is they're everywhere.
Hmm.
So, it's impossible to go through a week without walking into some sort of a shop or business somewhere and not see the Coke.
Hmm.
Not to see Coke. And so you're constantly reminded of it.
Yeah.
But if you're not Coke, you're going to have to do this through some other mechanism, and it's usually through some kind of marketing mechanism.
Yeah.
But it is not cheap to keep a customer reminded that you exist so that they'll keep coming back. You have to
Yeah, and
pay.
yeah, this Coke example, right, that reminds me of another point, and that's probably the last point we can cover today because we are almost run out of time. I think there's this like Byron Sharp's double jeopardy law, right, which says
Right.
that if you're already a large brand, then the likelihood of you getting the can you explain what that is like? The
Right.
probability of return customers is higher for larger brands, so you're kind of like screwed twice as a smaller
Right.
brand, right? Yeah.
So you have two things. One is, if you're a large brand, uh, you will have higher levels of loyalty than if you're a small brand.
Hmm.
Again, this has been true. I mean, the first studies on this go back into the mid 1950s,
Hmm.
and what you consistently see is that your your long-term retention rate is very directly tied to how big you are,
Hmm.
what your market share is. And some of this is because if you're very large, you have a lot of money to spend on brand marketing, and
Yeah.
so you can keep doing the TV commercials,
Hmm. Like the Coke
uh,
example, right?
like the Coke example. But then the other aspect of this is that what I call heavy buyers tend to be more loyal than light buyers.
Hmm.
And this is part of where the double jeopardy comes in, is that small brands tend to have a higher percentage of light buyers than heavy buyers. And so, so again, if you're a relatively obscure soft drink,
Hmm.
you're probably, even if you're loyal to that soft drink, you're still probably buying more Coke than you are, Fanta grape.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, and so this is the idea of double jeopardy, is that large brands tend to have i- a more loyal customer base than small brands,
Hmm.
and then heavy users tend to be more loyal than light users, and those smaller brands will have a higher percentage of light users.
Hmm.
And there's basically no way out of this. I mean, the fix is to get bigger.
Hmm.
But there's really nothing that you can do in terms of a loyalty program or marketing that is going to fundamentally alter kind of the structure of these buying patterns. And again, these buying patterns go back many decades,
Yeah.
and all the way to the present. I mean, there's still studies being done to this day that continue to see these buying patterns.
Okay.
And so this is why, you want to be very skeptical of people who can promise to, make dramatic changes to, to loyalty for your customers, because there are a lot of things you can do that's in your power, like making your stuff available for people to buy, making it
Mm.
easy to buy. But a lot of this stuff is just outside any ability to control.
Yeah.
And you come to a point to where you're far better off to focus on getting new customers
Right.
than to continue to pour money into trying to keep old customers.
Yeah, I think for me, I think that's the takeaway from all this, right? There are things. This doesn't mean that you should ignore your loyalty programs and anything. You still have to keep doing it. You have to keep doing a lot of those things, but don't bet 100% of your business on that, on just like repeated customers. You have to keep growing, and that's the way. Because as you grow, as you acquire more customers, your market share grows, and then all these other laws kick in, and then that's basically you have to. So again, it's not like there's no easy answer in all of this. There are no shortcuts. You just have to keep keep a close eye on all the different aspects of your business, and loyalty and retention is one of it. But you also have to focus on growth. I think we have kind of run out of time today, so just a plug for Ordoro. Ordoro, we are an order management, inventory management software. We work with a lot of small retailers who sell through Shopify, Shopify Plus, BigCommerce, Amazon Marketplace. So we're looking to solve the logistics side of your business on the shipping, label creation, or order management, or inventory management, or drop shipping. Take a look at us, ordoro.com. So that's all we have time for today. I'll be back next week talking about a different topic. And thanks again to Dale for being on this. And we'll definitely continue this discussion with Dale in a later episode.